The season is about to start, and all eyes are set on three of the biggest teams in recent years: Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari. Who will come out on top after the winter break, and who will stumble? Have Mercedes finally been able to figure out the zero-pod design? Have Ferrari finally found a way to keep their engine working? Or will Red Bull be able to maintain their top dog status, even though they are struggling with the cost cap penalty? In today's video, we're diving into the biggest changes you can expect from these three teams, and which parts of the car they've most upgraded. Besides the relative failure of last year's chassis, Mercedes' reasoning for sticking with its short side pod idea for this season's Formula 1 car is very convincing. Ferrari is compelling in its comparable explanation for its 2023 car being simply a minor modification to the 2022 model. Will there be enough against a Red Bull team on the rise, having won all but 5 of last season's 22 races, and with very little change in the technical regulations? This isn't to say Ferrari and Mercedes made bad decisions. Such requests may be inspired, yet it's more important stressing the subject as we approach into 2023, since the competitive level of the season will likely be decided by the response. Mercedes feels that last year's troubles were unrelated to the innovative and unique sidepod configuration. Technical Director Michael Elliott says that there were occasions last year when they weren't so sure. Periods when we were questioning ourselves and asking, have we made a major mistake? Do we need to change what we are fundamentally doing? But if you tear it all up and start again, you're going to start further back than where you are. It's better to take the car you've got and build on it. Although we had a lot of problems with the car last year, there was also a lot of goodness in the car. There were things it did well. You have to be careful not to throw those things away by starting again. We've analysed it back and forth, says Toto Wolff, and we believe this side pod is not a performance relative part. I love the fact that we stayed bold and continue to follow what the science says for us. Indeed, the most important performance driver in this generation of car is the one that is least obvious, the super powerful underfloor. The side pod layout is essentially merely a second-order decision in how to best optimize cooling demands, while also maximizing airflow speed via the space between the rear wheels, as this improves underbody performance. The radiator arrangement determines the side pod form, which influences the placement and geometry of the critical underfloor inlets. The pods have little effect on aerodynamic performance on their own. Everything is submissive to that underfloor, and we still don't know what Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes have done there. So this is one of the things the teams would love to keep a secret. Looking back at last season, we only got to see the proper underfloor when the cars would get towed out of the grid. So we'll have to wait a bit to see what the teams have done here. The handling of the aero platform was where last year's Mercedes W13 battled the most. Addressing the initial porpoising issue moved the car off its optimal rear riding height, reducing downforce and forcing the installation of a larger wing, which increased drag. Maintaining the ride height within a range that maximized downforce while avoiding porpoising required driving the rear suspension exceedingly stiff, especially considering its limited range of travel. It had been planned that way without being aware of the porpoising issue, and because the entire rear end and gearbox architecture was predicted on this inadequate range of motion, they were trapped with it for the season. The degree of stiffness was larger than the stiffness of the sidewalls of the tyres, hence the phenomenon of bouncing, which is different from the aero-induced porpoising motion, was generated. Maintaining the car in this extremely limited space made it exceedingly unpredictable on entrance into slow turns, despite its excellent high-speed corner performance. Actually, it was generally the fastest through such corners in the second part of the season. It was unbeatable through Austin's rapid S's, for example. Yet, as usual, unpredictable and snappy around the slow corners and sluggish on the straights. In a perfect wind tunnel environment without the porpoising issue, the zero-pod concept combined with the W13's underfloor produced excellent figures. Statistics that, if duplicated in reality, would have left Red Bull and Ferrari fighting over the crumbs. That was Mercedes' belief until the car took to the circuit and exposed its terrible reality. In simulation, the large amount of exposed floor caused a large volume of air to flow between the back wheels and tug harder on the underfloor air exiting the tunnel diffusers. As a result, the underfloor airflow is accelerated, resulting in incredible downforce. Additionally, the compact pods allowed the floor inlets to be set in a way that Mercedes felt would maximize tunnel performance. It's natural that the Mercedes technical staff has been hesitant to abandon this idea. So if the mechanical components of the equation, particularly the rear suspension, can be made more sympathetic to the aerodynamic demands of the car, and the underfloor can be made less sensitive, they may be able to begin to unlock the concept's previous unattainable potential. It is, in essence, Mercedes' offer for a counter-argument to Red Bull's overwhelming supremacy in 2022. When looking at this year's Mercedes Challenger, it's clear to see they've introduced some changes to the front wing, with new slot gap generator to enhance the airflow. Next to this, there have been changes to the floor, especially on the front where the vanes were placed. It will be interesting to see if the new floor setup will enable the car to keep its composure during slower corners. Ferrari's is significantly different, but it has made a similar choice to keep its original idea with just minor changes. The outwashing side pod fronts and depression inside the side pod tops not only boosted the efficacy of the louvers there, but also kept more airflow directed towards the beam wing without overflowing over the sides, resulting in significant downforce. This, along with a specially tuned power unit that provided super fast acceleration out of corners, resulted in a car that won 11 poles last year, 2 more than Red Bull. Nonetheless, it proved unreliable and had to be run in detuned shape for the most of the season. With the engine's dependability restored and its early season potency restored, the aero idea, with a few adjustments, particularly the innovative S-duct around the cockpit sidewalls, will undoubtedly be a fantastic foundation for a title challenge. It is Ferrari's spiel. Ferrari's biggest change can be seen on the top side of their side pod, better known as the bathtub section. It has been made less dramatic, and the next exit louver will help to improve the radiator cooling in those areas. Next to this, they've also opted to make changes to the front wing. It now has the common full-width slot gap between the front and second element. One important thing to note is that Ferrari opted to add 5 new vanes on the third and fourth flaps. These look familiar to the ones Mercedes tried to implement last year but got banned. So we'll have to wait and see if these remain legal for the start of the season. One or both of these approaches might be successful, but Red Bull will not have been silent. Additionally, from what we saw, Red Bull's underfloor geometry was far more sophisticated than anybody else's, and appeared to be built to maximize usable, constant downforce across the speed range and operating circumstances. Even the team's use of modifications in the design of the intake fins to adjust the aero center of pressure based on circuit demands revealed a degree of aerodynamic skill unrivaled. This is the strongest Red Bull team we've ever had, according to Christian Horner. It's clearly blazing on all cylinders, and it's hard to conceive that its wind tunnel time limit will be enough to knock it off track. Red Bull, unlike the other 2 teams in this video, haven't been as generous, so we haven't seen the new car just yet, but it's most likely to have some distinct changes in the main aero areas, such as the floor and side pods. We'll have to wait and see. So that's how the season is shaping up ahead of the first test. Who are you betting on? Will we get to see a proper 3-way battle this season? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to discuss the topic with you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to make sure you're up to date with the latest news and upgrades on the grid when the season starts. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.